From the lowest to the highest, from the furthest to the nearest, from the smallest of the smallest to the greatest of the greatest, yoga is about all of life, everything we do, all of existence. My name's James Bogue. Welcome to the Whole Life Yoga Podcast. It's been a while since I posted a podcast episode, and one of the reasons is in recent weeks I've been very immersed in the Rāmāyaṇa and giving an online course in English and French and an in-person course on this amazing epic in the Indic tradition. And I thought maybe I should actually share an example of a session. So the Rāmāyaṇa, if we were to tell the whole thing from beginning to end, we could do this in a short form in a couple of hours perhaps, or in a longer form in 20 or 40 hours perhaps. The course that is just culminated was a 12-hour course, which allowed us to tell the story in some detail and go into some episodes in more depth, including in the example session, which is from a couple of weeks back. And it is when Hanuman, this great Vanara hero, is taken center stage. It's part of the Sundara Kanda. Sundara means beautiful. So it's the most beautiful section of the text. I agree with that. And Hanuman takes center stage. And as I tell the story, I also use some of the incidents and details to kind of elaborate some of the practical instruction that the text is sharing. So in the springtime, I'll be doing a similar course on the Bhagavad Gītā. It will be a 12-session course, sessions of an hour and a half. Now, typically when I've been teaching online courses, they've been 2-hour sessions, and in recent years they've been quite long courses, 60 to 64 hours on Yoga Sutras 1 year and then Bhagavad Gītā chapter 2 last year. So next spring, this 12-session course on the Gita is going to be quite a distilled overview of the Gita. We will situate the Gita in relation to the Mahabharata epic, and we'll talk about the symbolism of the setting, and then we'll focus on particular teachings. So if you're interested in this type of learning, if you listen to this podcast and think, oh yeah, I kind of appreciate this lens of exploring these timelessly practical teachings through this ancient Indic wisdom, then sign up for the course. You don't even need to be able to attend live. Everybody who participates has access to all the recordings, and I sometimes share quite detailed notes as well. Many people who participate listen or watch multiple times the weekly sessions. So anyway, this is an example, and I hope you enjoy it. Just one note before getting into the session, and it takes, it's part of a course. So I sometimes mentioned last week or in a previous session, but even if you're not familiar with the story, I do think in this episode, it will convey nonetheless practically useful things, and it builds. It starts off fairly slowly the first 4 or 5 minutes, and then it really kind of, I would say, then it really comes alive. The fire really starts to burn, and we get transported on the beautiful waves of rasa, of flavor, of the amazing poetry from Valmiki's original. Enjoy. Om Gananam Tha Ganapatigam Avamahi Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmana Brahmanaspata Anashrinvannotebesira Saranam Om Gam Tatpurushaya Vitmahi Vakratundaya Dhimahi Tanno Randav Prachodayati. Om Ganganapataye Namah, Om Ganganapataye Namah, Shri Mahaganapataye Namah. Om Namaste Astavan Vishveshwaraya Mahadevaya Triambakaya Tripurantakaya Trikalagnikalaya Kalagnadradraya Nilakantaya Mrityunjayaya Sarveshwaraya Sarashivaya Shriman Mahadevaya Namah. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. So, welcome, Good evening. And today we will continue Hanuman's adventures in Lanka. So, last week we had the episode of the leap over the ocean, the traversing of the ocean. Welcome, Jagdeep. And we also had last week in this exploit, this great exploit of Hanuman, a representation in story form of the Ashtanga Yoga in action. Yes? So we could say that, for example, Yama Niyama Asana Pranayama, this is what Hanuman's doing before he sets off. Yama Niyama, he's harnessed his energy. He's directed his intention, his life force, his physical, mental, emotional intelligence and intent. And so he's become established, Sthira Sukham Asanam, in a seat of clear action and intent. Pranayama, he is harnessing his life force. Pratyahara, this was described very vividly as he drew in his limbs, drew in his ears. Then dharana, we saw this exemplified, and Jagdeep mentioned this to me in a comment during the week. When he encounters Mainaka, the friendly mountain, he's not distracted. When he encounters Surasa, the test from the gods, he finds the skillful way through. When he encounters the terrible ogress or Rakshasi, Sinhika, even though he can't really see what's happening, he feels his force is drained from him, he maintains his composure. So we see the power of yoga in action. Now, at the end of last week, Hanuman was just about to land on the island of Lanka, or maybe he did land. I can't remember if I got to that point in the English session. In the French, he landed on Lanka. Do you remember how he lands on Lanka? No, I think that's where we got to. Before we get to his landing on Lanka, just one thing, I'm just going to say this now. If it's all new, don't be alarmed. The idea is you'll have this as a reference and you can return to, but Hanuman is traveling where? To Lanka, for the sake of Sita and Rama. Is anybody familiar with the bija mantras that are sometimes associated with the elements and the chakras? Lam or lung, what is it associated with? So it's associated with the root, Muladhara chakra, yeah? Yeah. What is the enemy at Muladhara chakra? What's the main difficult force to reckon with? It's to do with survival, yeah? So it's fear. What are the Rakshasas? They're the kings of fear. They're those who cling. So we're going to the kingdom of our fears. And we said, where did Ravana imprison Sita? In a very well-constructed prison. A beautiful garden, a paradise, if you like, a walled garden, in a palace, in a castle, in a citadel, surrounded by the water. Hanuman, he started at the beginning. He did the whole ashtanga. Who is the lord of the Muladhara? Who is the lord of Lam? Archetypally speaking. Who is the lord of beginnings? Ganesha Sharanam, Sharanam Ganesha. Ganesha, yeah? From a certain perspective, we can say, what does Hanuman do before he makes the leap? He Ganeshas himself. In the sense, what does he do? All his gunners, all the constituent elements, the units, the members of the gang of his being, he draws them all together. He draws it all to the center, and then he makes that great move across the ocean. Does that make sense? Then, having started at the beginning, having drawn himself in, Hanuman and Ganesha, they have a lot in common. They are representations of the supreme consciousness with an animal form and a human body. So they combine the animal and the human intelligence. Ganesh is associated with Muladhara. Does anybody know where Hanuman is especially associated with? He's the son of the wind. Earth, water, fire, air. The fourth, the heart chakra. Rama is the king of the Surya Vamsha, solar plexus, yeah? Hanuman is considered the greatest ever brahmachari. Now, brahmachari, sometimes people say it's a celibate, but it's much more nuanced than that. It means he's a master of the 3 lower chakras. So instead of being the prisoner of fear, of desire, and the will for power, he's able to exercise the helpful, harmonious potency of his basic instincts and transmute them to support his central intent, which is what? To serve Rama and Sita, the soul and its discerning capacity, symbolized by Sita. So Sita is associated with the upper chakras, like the 5th and the 6th, and Rama with the 3rd. So Hanuman bridges them. This is why he's sometimes called the Guru. But in order to facilitate that restitution, or that full integration, that full Ganesha-ing of the whole system, we have to traverse the ocean and fathom the subconscious. And this has begun with this great exploit that we had last week. And we've also seen that as Hanuman did that, he demonstrated very clearly how established in yoga he already is. So if we take any archetypal yogic story in the Puranas or in the Itihasa, some stories are much more elaborate than others. But any story, even if it's just one small episode, it's always helpful to bear in mind this is representative of a bigger, vaster, ongoing process. What 4 qualities were lauded by the skywalkers, the celestials, who were observing with awestruck wonder Hanuman's greatness as he completed his task of crossing the sea? Do you remember those 4 words? Dritti, Drishti, Matihi, and Daksha. So I think it's just worth reiterating because this is such a beautiful distillation of these yogic principles. We mentioned Dritti is related to the root Dra, Dharma. How is it that Hanuman is able to do the seemingly impossible? Because he's acting in accord with his deepest Dharma, his essential nature. So I would suggest that ultimately, the only thing that's truly sustainable is Dharma. It's the essential nature that prevails when everything else is gone. It's sometimes referred to as Shesha, the remainder. Symbolized with iconography of Vishnu by the serpent upon which he is supported, and an iconography of Shiva by the ash that remains when everything is burnt. But there is, if we actually incarnate our true Dharma, we will be able to operate through much greater challenge with more ease because we won't be pretending. We will be drawing on our deeper power. Make sense? Second quality was, somebody said drishti, yes. We've spoken about this many times now. So in the last couple of years, people on the course in Vevey, people who've studied with me, this idea, Hanuman, he's able to see a big perspective. He's very focused, but he's not tunnel vision. He's got that vastness. This is real drishti. Yes, it means being focused, but it also means having the attitude of a student. He's already super dhriti, he's super established, but he's still a student. He's still able to do something that he's never done before. Why? Because he's open. Make sense? And with regard to drishti and studentship, when we are engaging with any of these yogic stories, it is altogether likely sometimes we will be puzzled, intrigued, our curiosity will be stimulated. The stories are designed to make us think. And as we keep coming back to the story and the stories, they may reveal more and more to us. So I think it might have been back in the second week, Pierre, who's not with us at the moment, he asked about why do people chant Sitaram? And I said, go start doing it. Start chanting Sitaram a few thousand times. And then if you do it a few thousand times, then you'll find out for yourself something about that, yeah? Om Shri Ram, Jaya Jaya Shri Ram. Practice it and see. The mantra will begin to reveal itself. Just like a story, these stories are communicating so much on so many levels. Similarly, the practice is associated with them. What was the third quality? Matihi. And we said this root mat is related to the word mathematics. It's the sum of our intelligence. Now, if, for example, we take the mantra, Om Shri Rama Jaya Jaya Shri Ram, and we count it on our hands, like in the traditional way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're moving the finger around as we count. Now we are recruiting, inviting into the practice of the mantra our touch capacity. When we're voicing, we're listening to it. We're tasting, we're feeling the fragrance of the mantra. And so the practice of the mantra technique, just like any other yoga technique, is a practical mechanism to invite us into this whole system participative engagement in what we're doing and taste it and savor and be nourished by that. So we actually experience what it's like to do something with the sum of our parts rather than in a partial way. Does that make sense? And that's how Hanuman goes about his exploit of crossing the ocean. He's doing it all in, but not in a kind of gripping way. He's relaxed, he's open, he's able to respond to the unpredictable, but he's using the sum of all his gifts. This is what mantra practice, this is what any type of meditative practice is intended to train us in. What's the fourth quality? Daksha. And this is so beautiful, this word. Daksha already means skillful. We've gained a little bit of familiarity with this principle in Sanskrit that when you lengthen the vowel sound, it means the son or daughter of, yeah? So daksha, in the dictionary, it means skillfulness, but it literally means the son or daughter of skill. So this is real mastery. Maybe you've seen people like this. They're such a master, they don't need to vaunt their mastery. They do things with such an ease. This is the type of mastery, this is daksha. And it is the fruit of long-term practice. That makes sense? So Hanuman has already demonstrated these four qualities. And the narrative, the way the story is conveyed and described in the Valmiki Rāmāyaṇa, as he completes the leap or the traversing of the ocean, these celestial commentators give this subhashita, this proverb, celebrating these four qualities. And so Hanuman already has shown us in the opening canto of the Sundarakanda that he is a great yogin. And sometimes Hanuman is described as the greatest of yogis. Krishna is the other person who is described. And we'll hear about Krishna next semester on the Bhagavad Gītā section of the course. But for now, shall we see what the great yogin Hanuman does next? Yeah? So the sky dwellers are feting him, saying how amazing he is. But guess what? There is still so much to do. He's crossed the ocean. He's done this thing that, according to the laws of nature, what's the difference between a sea and an ocean? An ocean is something that cannot be crossed by a human swimmer. But Hanuman's done it. Everybody's in awe, but his work is just getting going. And this is something that's going to be true in practice. We've made it across. We've gone beyond our previous limits. And now what do we see? Now we see a whole new mountain range in front of us. We couldn't even see it before. And now we thought, oh, we've done so much, we've come so far. And oh no, I've only just got going. This is just the beginning. So the reality of yoga practice is, it's not going to get easier. It's going to get harder, a lot harder. However, it's going to become significantly easier to navigate the harder thing more easily. Does that make sense? Yeah. So Hanuman now, the description says he makes himself small, like a cat. He lands on Lanka. So beautiful. Like a cat. What does that mean? We can picture him making himself into the form of a cat using his siddhis, but the text just tells us it's a poem, yeah? So suggestion, what does it mean if we land somewhere like a cat? And anybody, I saw a cat was it on your screen, Costanza? Yeah. What is special about a cat? I don't know about you, but for me, the cat is the epitome of grace. Ease, efficiency, no wasted effort. The cat can be quiet, stealthy. And what type of animal is a cat? It's a hunter. So what does this suggest about the way we approach? Where is Hanuman approaching? He's approaching the kingdom of our own fears. So when we're in the yoga business, the yoga practice, we need to muster the courage, the heroic valor to face our fears and journey into the kingdom of our fears. But how to go about it? The text suggests, like a cat, not wasting energy, you're going to need the energy. Quietly, don't alarm the fears because then they will quickly resist. I think, have you done this exercise with me before, where you take the hands together and you push very quickly with one right hand against the left, and instead of this happening, this happens because there's that immediate resistance. Now, hunter, I mentioned mountain pose last week as well. Like sometimes in a standing meditative posture, sometimes people describe it as the hunter's pose. The hunter who's waiting quietly in the forest and their awareness is 360 degrees. Because if you're a hunter in the forest, you could also be the hunted if you're a human, yeah? So you're not fixated on your prey, you're 360-degree aware. So I think this is also suggested by the cat image. 360-degree awareness, moving subtly, stealthily. Hanuman lands on Lanka like a cat. And he lands on this beautiful island and he starts to approach the very beautiful city. Now, the poetry in this section is just gorgeous. Valmiki personifies the city of Lanka as a beautiful woman. And then it is said that the guardian protectress, the Rakshasi in a female form of the city, comes to him and confronts him. Hanuman's been looking, where's the right place to enter? He comes to one of the entrances to the city, and then she comes to him, this tremendous guardian in a female form. And she says, hey, I've seen you there, monkey boy, where are you going? Who are you? And Hanuman is like, oh, well, I just got lost. I went for a swim and I wound up on the beach here, and then I saw this amazing looking sea. So I thought, oh, while I'm in the locality, let me look. I must surely have landed on Lanka, the fabled city of Ravana. And I heard it's always this masterpiece. So I thought I'd have a look. And she's like, I can see through your attempted deception. That's not why you're here. Tell me the truth. And Hanuman says, I'm just a visitor. And then she goes to try and hit him. And when she tries to hit him, Hanuman thinks, she's a woman, I can't kill her. So he just dodges and gives her a slap. And she's this big Rakshasi, but she's just knocked to the ground. And she's overpowered by his slap. And then it's like, oh, she remembers. Oh, oh, the time has come. The prophecy is realized because she was told one day she would be overpowered by a Vanara, and this would spell the doom of Lanka and the end of the rule of the Rakshasis. And it was time for her to leave. And so she does. And she says, oh, great Vanara, this is the day that was foretold so long ago. I give you my blessings on your way. May you be successful. Look carefully for Janaki now. My blessings upon you. And then she's off. Now, before we go any further, just very significant detail. This guardian, it's mentioned there's all sorts of fierce guardians around the walls, but Hanuman approaches and it's a female guardian, and she's the spirit of Lanka. So we've had this description of the city, and it's just gorgeous poetry. And now that spirit encounters Hanuman, and then she leaves and blesses him that he'll be successful in his mission. So what does this tell us about Ravana's kingdom? The thing he's gripping onto, its power source is already gone. It's done. We don't notice this in the narrative. It's all super exciting. Will he find Sita? But it's already been seeded. It's already happened. It's already guaranteed because the Shakti is gone. The inertia of all those years of Shakti is still there. So there's going to be a tremendous battle still to come. But the change has already happened. It's not evident yet, but it's already happened. And this is something that can give us great comfort when we look out at the world And sometimes if we feel a bit stuck in our own practice, no, don't worry. Keep going, keep doing your dharma. The change is already happening. It's already happening. Make sense? So she gives him his blessing, and now Hanuman enters the city. And then we get this very beautiful description of what he sees. He sees beauty, he sees diversity, he sees Rakshasas and Rakshas of all shapes, sizes. He sees people doing puja, Vedic recitation. He sees people in the act of love. He sees people doing all sorts of arts and crafts. He sees people practicing the martial arts. In other words, he sees all the types of things you would associate with human life. And he's looking, he's seen lots of, no sign of Sita. And we see in Hanuman a first sense of a little bit of misgiving, uncertainty. Well, can I find her? No sign of her yet. But as he describes Lanka in such beauty and such diversity, I think there is another rich suggestion here. This is not some cartoon bad guy town. This is a great civilization. And I think it reminds us of many things. But one thing it reminds is that our deep fears and the things that are blocking us from advancing on our own path to recover, remember our deeper dharma, they are hidden behind very well-constructed walls. Remember what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, the line of good and evil runs through every human heart. And sometimes we don't look deep enough to see that. Who has caused the most mass murder in the world history? I think it's the utopians, yeah? The people who had great intentions. They thought they were doing what was good, but they brought mass murder in their wake. Why? Because they didn't act from their heart. They acted from their head. They acted from their computational idea of what will make the world better. They didn't look inside to see how this in their head was getting skewed by their own hidden fears and desire for power and lust and all those other things. Does that make sense? And this is further amplified by this beautiful and subtle contrast that we're going to encounter in the very next section. So after Hanuman sees the city, he finds Ravana's palace. He enters the palace, stealthy like a cat, he goes in. And one of the first rooms that he encounters is like Ravana's garage or his like, I don't imagine some gazillionaire, like, does anybody here have a garage for their car at home? But he has like a kind of, it's like an aircraft hangar. So he's got lots of aircraft, including the Pushpaka Vimana, the most celebrated of Vimanas, of aircraft. And it's basically like a flower-decked garden palace cruise liner that can zoom through the skies. How did Ravana get it? It's the fruit of his tapas. Yes, he stole it from his brother Kubera, but he was able to do that because of the power of the tapas that he'd accrued in his devotion towards Lord Shiva. So here we have Ravana as a great devotee. This Pushpaka Viman is this beautiful ship that he got because of the fruits of his devotion. But what was Ravana's devotion motivated by? It was motivated by the desire for power and control and dominion. Meantime, Hanuman encounters the Pushpaka Vimana and he's like, wow. But what is Hanuman's devotion characterized by? Love. He wants to serve Rama. He wants to serve the soul. So Hanuman isn't interested in fancy objects, but it's also like when we see the Pushpaka Vimana, we're reminded Hanuman is on this exploit, this mission of devotion. Ravana's devotion just took him into greater arrogance and hubris, but Hanuman's devotion is going to create more and more freedom. So we have this lovely contrast embedded in there as the story unfolds. Anyway, nobody else is in the garage, so Hanuman goes deeper into the palace and he finds himself in the women's quarters, the harem. And again, the description is extensive and rather beautiful. And Hanuman sees hundreds and hundreds of gorgeous bells from all over the galaxy. And they've obviously been having a fine old night of it, been drinking and dancing, and they're all in this, they're all like lying one on, one's head in one's lap, one's head on one's chest, their arms around each other. The air smells sweetly of the intoxicating liquor. There are musical instruments scattered about. And it is said that all of these hundreds of women, they are utterly in love with Ravana. Some of them are pretending they're kissing each other and pretending they're kissing Ravana. None of these women were forced. They all went by choice. This is said very explicitly. And then Hanuman sees on this big bed Ravana himself. And now we have another extensive description of Ravana in his awesome beauty. What a just glorious being he is. Hanuman's like, wow, look at that. And then in another room, he sees an extraordinarily beautiful woman. And Hanuman gets excited. He turns a couple of somersaults. He kisses his tail. He thinks, this must be Sita. She's so beautiful. But then he thinks, this can't be Sita. She would never have allowed herself to be in this place. And he kind of, and sure enough, that's not Sita. It's Mandodari, Ravana's number one queen, you might say. And then Hanuman, he's been all through the women's quarters. He's seen hundreds of women in various states of undress. And he thinks to himself, oh no, I have surely incurred the sin of looking at the wives of other men's wives. And oh no. And then he thinks, no, wait a minute. I'm on a mission to find Sita. So I need to look I'm looking for a woman. I can't avoid going to the women's quarters. I didn't look upon them with lust. I have not sinned. Which it can seem like a kind of arbitrary detail, but no, what's it telling us? Do not let protocols get in the way of what is right. He was on a mission looking for a woman. He's going to have to go into the women's quarters, even if they're all naked. Make sense? And he's on his mission. He's trying to do his dharma. When we try to do our dharma, what's going to happen sooner and later, more than once, the call of dharma may call us to do things that we would have preferred not to have to do. It will take us to places that we wouldn't have imagined having to go. Make sense? Because we're going beyond the known. We're basically saying, not my will, but thy will. Yeah, we're surrendering to something greater than ourselves. And as we practice, we're going to go beyond the known. So practice, be prepared to be surprised. Yeah? And then he's been through all the women's quarters and begins now a very, very, I find it just moving and powerful section. Because we start to see Hanuman's inner struggle. So far, he's already achieved this extraordinary feat of traversing the ocean. Skillfully, he has overcome the, let's say, mystical protection that was guarding the city. He's penetrated it. And now he's begun his search. But he's not finding any trace of Sita. And Valmiki tells us very clearly, Hanuman starts to feel a bit of doubt and despondency. And guess what starts happening in his mind? He begins to imagine, oh, she must have been eaten by these Rakshasis. Is there any evidence for that? No. But even great Hanuman starts to imagine the worst. Interesting. And then he starts to think, oh, no, I must forget this negativity. And he kind of pull myself, no, I must be indefatigable. I must be resolute. I must keep going. I must be patient. And he rouses himself and he keeps looking. And he keeps looking. But again, it continues and he still can't find any trace of Sita. And then now we get it, it's spelt out in such rich detail. We get this beautiful picture of Hanuman spiraling into this negative tailspin of internal self-criticism, or this, like he's losing his groundedness. And he starts saying, I think I'm going to fail. And if I fail, if I go back and I haven't found Sita, then Rama will surely kill himself, and then Lakshmana will kill himself, and then Bharata and Shatrughna will kill themselves, and then Queen Kaushalya will kill herself, and then Sugriva will kill himself, and Ruma and Tara and Angada and all my Vanara friends. So he starts to he's imagining this worst case scenario. Yeah, but we see this very realistic portrait of what happens when we get gripped by fear, despair, despondency. And I think this is, sometimes I say, half jokingly, Indian mythology is the best because of this right here. Because we don't just see the hero doing the great jump across the ocean. We witness him in the reality of doing the great feat. It includes these moments when you're brought to your limits. Practice means going beyond the known. So at some point or other, we're going to have to go to the limit. We're going to be brought to the place where we wouldn't have imagined we'd be able to make it through. And then he says, it would be better for me to fast to death than to return not having completed the mission. And he says, there's a very striking, he says, the garland of my glory has been snapped by my failure to find Sita. And then he contemplates suicide in detail. And Hanuman, he lists several ways he could take his own life. Shall I walk into the water and drown myself? Shall I walk into the flame? Shall I fast to death? He's contemplating various means he could take his own life, and it's all spelt out. So we see the great hero in the throes of despair. And then he comes to think, no, I should, suicide is not a sensible thing to do. No, I should preserve my life, yeah? But we see nonetheless that he's racked by grief and his mind is just all over the place. Have you ever experienced this in your own life? If you haven't, and you're only a few years into yoga practice, it might come. And this is why we need to be careful about the edge and the limit. One of my teachers in India says, you don't need to go chasing your karma. It's coming to you. Practice will take you to your limit, so don't push the limits. Does that make sense? You need your energy because when we're doing sadhana, we're basically asking to move more quickly through our karmic residue. So in our practice, when we work with technique, we want to make sure that the practice is nourishing us and facilitating that sense of more stability, more groundedness, more driti, more ease of drishti, more matihi and more daksha. If I'm overly drained, what happens to my skillfulness, my ease of vastness of perception, my capacity to be integrated? It diminishes, yeah? So practice will take us to the limit. So don't look for the limit. It's coming, don't worry. Is that clear? Now here's Hanuman in the depths of despair. But what happens next? He's going to come out of it. And how does he come out of it? It's so beautiful. What carries him forwards is his dharma and his svabhava, the quality of his being. Because Hanuman remembers why he's doing what he's doing. He remembers his friends and he remembers his aims. In other words, he reorients. But what does he reorient to? He reorients back to what has been the focus of his work, the focus of his life. So there is this reality here. When we are put to the test, it will reveal what we've really been focusing on. Some people say, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And some people say money corrupts people, but other people say, no, power and money reveal. And if a person has really been oriented towards something very virtuous, power and money will allow them to just do that with greater facility. And there have been examples in history of virtuous, powerful people. And they might not be as obvious as the despotic examples. We might be able to think of as many of them, but nonetheless, these examples are there. Yeah. So what happens to Hanuman? He's put to the test, and what does he reorient back to? He reorients back to what I would suggest is what he has been praying to, what he's been practicing for. So this idea of prayer, some of you may have heard me mention this before, but one of the Sanskrit terms for prayer is prartha, and it means to orient towards the means. So this is the real purpose of Surya Namaskara. Not to execute the particular technique, but rather to practice the internal attitude of orienting towards Driti, Drishti, Matihi, and Daksha, ashtanga, unifying ourselves, and orienting towards that which is subtler, deeper than our idea of ourselves. Namaha. What does namaha mean? Nam is the verb to bow, to orient. I give myself to. But na, what does na mean in Sanskrit? No, not. And ma, not me. So when I do a namaha, I am orienting to that which is beyond my egoic idea or current understanding of what I am. So when I do Surya Namaskara, I am offering myself to Surya, symbol of totality, symbol of the light of consciousness, the source itself. Similarly, if I do Om Namah Shivaya, Om Ganganavadi Namaha, Om Shri Hanumate Namaha, whatever it is, this is a symbol of that which is vaster than my current idea of I, me, mine. Yeah? So when we're practicing, what are we practicing for? What are we aiming at? What am I inculcating? What am I conditioning myself to? What am I actually prioritizing in my life? Yoga recognizes everything we do is training. We're conditioning ourselves. We get good at what we repeat. So when we're practicing, we need to take care. What am I repeating? What am I embedding? What am I engrooving? How am I doing what I'm doing? What is my focus? Am I trying to dominate, control? Am I forcing things? This is one of the great hazards in the modern world, because the conditioning of the zeitgeist is so strongly this idea of push through, force things to your will. This is not the spirit of yoga. Yoga works by collaborating with the force of life, with the intelligence of the cosmos. The intelligence of the cosmos is not what the internet gurus, say, do this and get these results. It's not that type of attitude. Domination and control need to be very careful. Did I talk about Hatha Yoga last week? About how in the medieval period, the people who were doing Hatha Yoga, this tantric method. So Hatha Yoga is part of a tantric lineage. Tantra means a mechanism, like a tool, a support, a technique. In many tantric practices, there is subtle, skillful, attentive work with particular forces of nature, and they're working to just redirect them in certain ways. And Hatha Yoga is sometimes associated with a forceful approach. For example, Kumbhaka, there are different types of Kumbhaka. There is the Kumbhaka that just emerges. Kumbhaka will emerge in meditative states of awareness. The breath will naturally slow and it might suspend. Then there's a Kumbhaka that somebody tries to count. I'm going to actively, forcefully extend my breath. Some lineages, they say that's just a terrible idea. Other lineages, this is a central practice. But it is to be noted, if you look at the traditional texts of Hatha Yoga was for full-time practitioners. They would practice 3 or 4 times a day at dawn, dusk, and additionally could be midnight or midday as well. And what do they do all afternoon? They listen and discuss the Puranas and the Itihasas. These are not householders. So the way of force is for people whose whole situation, it also says in the Hatha Yoga text, you can only practice this in a peaceful kingdom. You can't do this when there's all sorts of commotion going around. Does anybody here live in a peaceful kingdom? This is not medieval time of Hatha Yoga. So we need to be extra careful when we're using anything that involves force, domination, control, because force, domination, control are way out of balance in the world. And consequently, we can think we're being moderate when we're still being aggressive. So as we're practicing, am I trying to dominate? Am I trying to control or force things? Or am I just allowing myself to roll on the inertia of the old ways? Because we could easily fall into that trap as well. Or am I hitting the yogic sweet spot? Am I collaborating actively, curiously, humbly with the forces of nature? And so inviting a greater, subtler coming together of my different intelligences so that, for example, the breath will begin to be more efficient, will support easier vitality, more spacious responsiveness, even amidst all of the craziness and pollution in all of the elements that besets the 21st century. Is that making sense? So many of my Indian teachers have pointed out, the techniques that used to work even 100 years ago, they don't work the same way anymore because all the elements are way more polluted. Space now, we've filled it with junk. All these, these people are putting gazillions of satellites up now. Obviously the earth, the water. Maybe in Switzerland there are some places where you can drink, there's beautiful, if you go high up in the mountains, you can drink lovely water. But when I was a boy, where I grew up, the tap water tasted so good. And then sometime in the early 21st century, now it tastes horrible. It's full of chlorine and all sorts. Element of fire, since the Industrial Revolution, kinetic energy is polluted. Element of air, we're all familiar with air pollution one way or another. So because of all that, it behooves us even more to really think about the skillful means, which Hanuman demonstrates. But where does Hanuman act from? He acts from love. What's the first teaching? What's the most essential teaching that I suggested? If you go to the language of Patanjali, what is the first most important teaching? Maitri, yeah? Be friendly to yourself. And who was Rama's first guru when he went out? Vishwamitra. Why did we spend so much time with Vishwamitra? Why does the text, the first Kanda of Rāmāyaṇa is full of these other stories? Why? What is the story of Vishwamitra? He was about competition, domination, control. He was envious of Vasishtha. He wanted to become dominant. And then he came to a point, he realized, I don't want to compete anymore. There's no point dominating. And he went from Kaushika, a noble, just king, but one who wanted to be in control. He wanted to be able to give the people what he thought was best. But eventually graduate from that. And who did he become? Vishwamitra. Vishwa, Vishnu. Rama, avatar of Vishnu. What does Vishnu mean? That which really nourishes and sustains. Vishwamitra, the friend of everybody. So this is the same motif. And Hanuman, he also very much incarnates that Maitri quality. So there is in the pits of despair, but we don't need to despair, because Hanuman, just like any of us, when he's taken to the edge, he will be revealed in the deeper reality of his character. And so in Hanuman's case, what comes forth? Devotion. the willingness to serve something beyond himself. And so it's described very beautifully. Now, having gone on that spiral of suicidal despair and contemplated in detail how he could kill himself, and then the consequences if he doesn't go back and everybody else could kill himself. It's so striking when you read the original. And I know some of you have got that Goldman translation, which is, it's a very thorough translation, but I don't actually like it because it's a translation. When you translate from Sanskrit, you've got to make a choice. But in so many sections, I feel I don't like the choices they've made. They really don't convey the flavor of the original Sanskrit. I much prefer the Gita Press translation. It's much less anglicized. There's way more repetition and stuff, but it's much closer to the original. And in the original, at these points, it's so illustrative, it's so informative. So in terms of the educational import of the way the text is conveyed, it comes across that much more powerfully. So we see Hanuman in the depths of despair, and we see him imagining the worst. And this is another really important thing that is emphasized in the yoga teachings. Where do we live? Where is the center of our life? So many people in the world today, we are facing a barrage of what we might call third-person ideas and information. It's not the first person. It's not what I'm actually experiencing in the realm of my own five senses. It's not second person in terms of the interaction I'm having with other real beings. It's just ideas. The media is telling me all these scary stories and I'm getting spun out. And we can live in the third person. This is pure Maya, and this has been exacerbated and amplified by the internet. It's not new, it's just everything's heightened right now. It's an extraordinary time to be alive. It's a time of the turning. Things are whirling. Yoga was made for these times. But what does Hanuman do? He salutes the 8 Vasus, the 11 Rudras, the 12 Adityas, the 2 Ashwins, and the 49 Vayus. And these are all Vedic gods, yeah? The Ashwin twins, the celestial physicians. The 49 Vayus, these 49 powers of the wind. This is to do with our pranic body, the energy inside. The Rudras, these are 11 other, they're also to do with fire and air inside our being. The 8 Vasus, elemental qualities within us. And the 12 Adityas, the 12 suns. This is all to do with the microcosm. In other words, he salutes the source. He salutes all of those divine forces beyond him and within him. In other words, he gathers himself. And he reminds himself what he is really about. So on last Saturday, I was giving a session on Ganesha here in Prague. Next semester, we will explore this another of the extraordinarily beautiful and instructive texts of the Indic tradition, the Bhagavad Gītā. In all three, we have the same principle. When we feel unsure, pause and gather. Listen. Stop, look, listen. When I was a child in England, at school, this is back in the 1980s, I guess, there was a campaign called the Green Cross Code. And the Green Cross Code was basically the code that little children would be taught for how to cross the road. And there was a green cross, and there was this on the TV, and they'd give you this booklet at school. You get to the edge of the road, stop, look both ways, and listen before you cross the road. So it's a nice way to remember. This is what, crossing the road, the path of practice. Sometimes we come to these places where we don't feel sure. We can feel full of despair. We can feel full of angst. We're not sure what to do. I don't know about you, but what I've noticed in my own life many times, including sometimes when I've been teaching the Gita, which is very, it's kind of very humbling and, gives me a tight slap. When I feel unsure, when I feel scared, when I feel overwhelmed, sometimes I have the tendency to accelerate and just push on with the old ways, even though I know it's not going to work. And that just brings more suffering. It just amplifies things. Yoga says, no, stop. And in the world we live in, stopping is massive heroism. This world is going to go, do, achieve. If you stop every day to do, for example, there's so many practices that can facilitate this. But one practice, I mentioned the mountain posture. So imagine you're standing on your 2 feet, feet underneath your hips. You're lining everything up. You can tune in subtly to the different diaphragms in the body to do that, for example. And then you bring your gaze to one point. You get into a focused look and you feel you're pulling yourself forward. Then you relax your gaze. So you're looking, as it were, to the sides of your own shoulder. You look into your peripheral vision and you make a vacant look. And you just stand in the vacant look, in that hunter's meditative position, where energy can flow freely, and you're in the vacant look. You're not in the forefront. You're not in this third person imaginary world. You're just there, receptive. You can do this very simple practice. You can do it for a short period of time. 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. But this itself is very recalibrating for the nervous system, but also for the modus operandi, our means of going about life. And you can do this easily. You can do it for 2 minutes, 3-4 times a day. It just fits into the day easily. To train ourselves that the pause isn't something to be scared of, but is a welcome sanctuary that doesn't need to be a big deal. What can often happen with many people I know who, I remember the first time I heard, I was really kind of surprised, but a gentleman I knew in India, he'd just learned to meditate, long-term asana practitioner, and he said he was terrified to sit quietly for 20 minutes. He said he just never did it. He grew up in a busy city. It was a lawyer, ashtanga vinyasa practitioner. So he'd got a lot of, he'd found a lot of relative steadiness from the discipline of that practice. But to actually really stop was terrifying for him. So the mountain posture and the vacant look is a very accessible, potent way to start inviting this space of the pause, which Hanuman shows us, and it's laid out in the Gita. We see it in so many stories. So Hanuman, he salutes all these deities, all these elemental forces. He gathers himself, and guess what happens next? He's brought himself into that matihi, joined up, cohesive state. He reaffirms his intent. He reminds us of what he's about. He continues to search, and sure enough, seek and ye shall find. And he notices, now it's the whole night's passed, the dawn, it's dawning. And as the sun starts to rise, you know how it is when the sun is just coming up over the horizon and it casts its rays. Sometimes it makes things look different from how they've looked in a different quality of light, yeah? And Hanuman sees a wall he hadn't noticed before, but the way the light's reflecting it, this is this wall. I've not looked there. And he approaches it. And this is the wall of the Ashoka Grove garden. Hanuman leaps up onto the wall and he sees this beautiful garden and there's a stream. And he thinks, maybe Sita will come to perform her morning Sandhya rituals. This is a good place for me to stop and observe. So now we see Hanuman, he's in his right mind again. His mind's no longer beleaguered by all of this doom thinking and worst case scenario imaginings. He's thinking with a sagacity about what's happening now. And then sure enough, he sees her. And he recognizes this must be Sita because of all the auspicious markings and her beauty. And when he sees Sita, Hanuman is like, oh wow, this is the person for whom already a lot of Rakshasas have died, yeah? But he thinks, she is worth more than the sovereignty of the three worlds. So we get Hanuman's initial impression of Sita, even before he's spoken to her. She is the goddess. She is Mother Earth incarnate. She is the forces of nature incarnate. So we just get that impression reinforced. But Hanuman can't go up to her yet and present the message from Rama because there are all these Rakshasas around her. Anyway, he manages to find his way closer. He's hiding in a tree. And then he can hear some of the Rakshasas are quite kind to her, but some are saying really menacing things. And then This is all, I'm kind of going through things quite quickly here. It's this whole Khan is super beautiful, every episode. But what then happens, the dawn, the sun's coming up now, it's the morning time. There's all these Rakshas guarding Sita, but then Hanuman hears all this jingle jangle and comes this whole fleet of 100 gorgeous women with Ravana in the middle of them. So he's come with 100 women and he's come to woo Sita. He wants to kind of persuade her to join him in his bed on his throne. And he starts off all, trying to be endearing. So he entreats her. He tells her how he is just longing for her, how, everything, he's not interested in anybody else. She can become the queen of all these thousands of women in his harem. He will do whatever she wants, all the rest of it. And Sita, as soon as he comes near her, she plucks a blade of grass and lays it on the ground as this symbolic barrier. It's like, I don't want you in my space. You must not touch me. She's still horrified that she's been touched by him. Her clothes are ragged. She's covered in dust, but she still has this lustrous glow about her, Hanuman tells us from his treetop position. And when Ravana tries to woo her, she says, your tongue should, when you speak, how dare you speak like this to me? How is it that your tongue does not fall out when you say such things to me? I'm the wife of Rama. I'm another man's wife. How can you speak to me like this? And she repudiates him again and again. And she's always, when she does so, she's always emphasizing her commitment to Rama and how a person like her, who is Rama's, how could anybody pull her away from Rama? She says, you can no longer separate me from Rama like you can separate the rays from the sun. These things are together. It's like, and then she says, when you try and step towards me, how does your foot not fall off? Like she's outraged, but she maintains this kind of strong dignity. And then after trying, offering all these things, then Ravana gets more aggressive. He even makes like he's going to strike her. He won't. We'll find out why shortly. But then he says, okay, well, if look, you've got a month to accept my offer. Come to my bed. Forget about this Rama fool, like be with me. I'm the greatest. Come to my bed. If you don't within 1 month, then I'll just have you eaten for breakfast. I'll eat you for breakfast. That's it. You've got a month. Think on it wisely. Ravana goes, like finally, one of his 100 goes to him and manages to come Rama, let's go. Come Ravana, let's go and I will comfort you and blah, blah, blah. Eventually he goes off. But there's still this crowd of Rakshasas, and they can't believe it because they all think, Ravana's so amazing. There's all these 1,000 other women who are in love with him. What's the matter with you, girl? You're so lucky that the king of the earth wants to have you as his queen. What are you resisting for? So some Rakshasas talk to her like this. This is such an amazing opportunity. Hundreds, millions of women would just, this would be their dream come true, and he wants you. So some speak to her like that. Others speak to her like, you foolish, arrogant woman. How can you say no to, for this you'll be punished. We will eat you. Don't think about a month before he even comes. We will eat you tomorrow. So some of them are like this. But then some others like, leave her alone, the poor woman, just, like it's her choice, So within the Rakshasi camp, you can see some have been kind to Sita, some have encouraged her, then some are more aggressive. Some just can't understand how she can resist Ravana. But then one other Rakshasi, an older lady called Trijata, she wakes up. She was asleep during all this. Some of the Rakshasas, they call them night crawlers. They like to stay up late. But this lady, she wakes up late and she's had this vivid dream. And she's kind of an elder amongst this troop who've been guarding Sita. And she's like, I've had a terrible dream. Very vivid. And she tells them this dream of basically how it's over. Ravana's doomed. And she says, it was so clear. He's coming with his brother and with a whole load of these super capable Varnara warriors. Ravana's time is over. you should be kind to Sita because she's the only one that will be able to protect you when Rama and the army come. The Rakshas are all doomed. And then the nice ones are like, they all go to Sita and she said, of course I'll protect you. And Sita, they said she was thinking how she could strangle herself with her own hair because she didn't want to be eaten by Ravana. She would rather die than be touched by him again. But then these Rakshas come to her, and then after that dream is announced, Sita starts to experience all of these very positive omens, and she leaves aside all thoughts of killing herself. And some of the Rakshasas, they go running off, and Sita's left alone. So Hanuman, this is his chance. But he thinks he's already seen how Ravana is trying to seduce her, and he knows that Ravana is this expert illusionist. He can change form at will. And so Hanuman thinks, I need to be careful because if I just, appear to her and say a nice story, she might think I'm Ravana trying to trick her. And he thinks, I know what I'll do. So Hanuman, he's in the tree now, really close to her. And now in a very sweet voice, he starts recounting the story of Rama and how great Rama is. And then going all the way through to the tremendous sadness that he's feeling now because he doesn't know where Sita is, and how he's dispatched all this army of Vanaras who are now his allies in their search for Sita, and a particular Vanara called Hanuman has come all the way to Lanka and is now in a place where he thinks he's beholding Sita. And then she sees him, and she thinks she sees like this Vanara, and I don't think it can be good to be dreaming of Ivana, and she's not sure she's in her right mind. She's barely eaten all these months. She's been fasting. She's emaciated. She's obviously been under tremendous duress. But something about Hanuman's presence calms her. And then Hanuman's able to reveal his bona fides, because Sita has her doubts. How does she know that she's not being tricked? So Hanuman reveals the ring and the piece of cloth, and the story that Rama said to tell her to prove that he's actually from Rama. And then Sita's kind of like this massive wave of relief washes through her. Her heart feels tremendously gladdened. And then they have this lovely conversation. And Hanuman offers to take her back to Rama. And Sita first says, I don't think that's possible because, I wouldn't be strong enough to make it. And Hanuman says, I can carry you, but don't worry about it. And then she says, no, I really think Rama has to come and get me, He should come and get me himself. Now, it is laid out practically. There's the idea, how can you go across the ocean carrying me? That's one, and then that she's too fragile, and it could be very dangerous to carry you across the ocean. So that's one factor. But there's also this factor that no, this is all part of the play. Now that Hanuman, the emissary of love, has found Sita, now Hanuman, symbol of the Guru, has found where she is. Now Rama and Sita, they have to come together again, and Rama has to play his part. So Hanuman agrees. Sita says, could you just, even though I've only got a month, now I really trust your prowess. Because to begin with, she's like, how did you make it across the ocean? She can't quite believe how strong he is. Then he shows her a few things. She's like, okay. And now she feels very reassured, and she feels reassured the army's coming and Rama and Lakshmana are going to come. She says, can you just not stay one day longer? And Hanuman says, don't worry, we'll be back sooner than you realize. And he takes his leave of Sita, and she blesses him. But Hanuman thinks, before I go back to Rama, I can do more here. My mission, there's more that can be achieved. And so this is also an important detail. Hanuman now takes the initiative. He was told by Sugriva to find Sita and come back and tell him where she was. But Hanuman has already ascertained Sita is being guarded by Ravana and his Rakshasa army in this citadel. And so Hanuman realizes, I should do some more full reconnaissance. And I should also instill fear in the Rakshasas. I should start the psychological war and the physical war now. And so this is what he does. So he takes his leave of Sita, and then he starts smashing up the walled garden, smashing down the walls, tearing down a few trees here and there. And sure enough, this raises the alarm, grabs the attention of some guards. Boom, boom, boom. They're all just instantly blasted to pieces by one of Hanuman's mighty blows. People go running to Ravana, and Ravana sends this group called the Kinkaras, basically a battalion of elite troops, 80,000 of them, it says, and they're all sent to him. This may be something of an exaggeration. Single-handedly, Hanuman destroys them all. The news gets back to Ravana, he can barely believe it. He sends out one of his top generals. Hanuman makes short work of him. He sends out his son Aksha. Hanuman kills him. He picks him up by his feet, whirls him around 100 times and smashes him on the ground. This is one of Ravana's mighty sons. He then sends out his most powerful son, who is called Indrajit. Why? Because he conquered Indra in a previous battle with the gods. Very powerful warrior. Along with Ravana and his brother Kumbhakarna, the most powerful of the Rakshasa warriors. Hanuman's already killed another of the second division of superpower warriors, already killed a couple of them. He sends out Indrajit. Now, Indrajit he knows the Brahmastra. Chaturmukha Brahma created God's weapon. He looses it against Hanuman. Now, do you remember when Hanuman got his name? Remember that boon from Brahma? He'll be invincible against celestial and terrestrial weapons. But Hanuman pretends that the net of Brahma's weapon has caught him. So he's already killed, thousands of soldiers. He's already smashed up the sanctuary of one of their deities. He smashed up the Ashoka Grove. He thinks, now it's time for me to get an audience with Ravana. And as I allow myself to be captured, I can do reconnaissance of the architecture of the city. So this happens. So he gets dragged through the streets, and the Rakshasas are throwing stuff at him and jeering at him, and all the while Hanuman is making a map of the city. So he can take that information back to his war council. And then he gets dragged into the court of Ravana, who wants to kill him. He's just had his son killed. He's lost loads of his top soldiers. He's not happy, as you might imagine. He says, "Who are you?" And he says, now this is also very beautiful. Hanuman says, "I am the humblest messenger in the great Vanara army of Sugriva, sent with a message from my king Sugriva on behalf of Rama, prince of the Ikshvaku lineage. You must return his wife Sita." So notice the first thing he says. Single-handedly, Hanuman has just achieved several superhuman feats. No weapons, and he's just dispatched the elite bodyguard. They're eliminated. And he says, "I am the humblest messenger." Now, do you send your best warriors as messengers? No. So when Ravana hears this is the psychological brilliance of Hanuman. But Ravana's like, you're from that princeling Rama. Kill him now. And now enters the scene. For the first, he's going to be a rather significant character now. Do you know who's going to speak next? Vibhishana. Say Vibhishana. Because Vibhishana is one of Ravana's two brothers. He has another brother called Kumbhakarna and Vibhishana. Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Vibhishana. 3. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear 3 in a yogic story? There's no right or wrong answer, but anybody say. Unmute. 3. 3 gunas, yeah? Sometimes these 3 are associated with the gunas. Guess what Ravana is associated with? Rajas. He's full of pride and drive and ambition, yeah? Kumbhakarna is a very mighty warrior, but he's got a huge appetite and basically he sleeps half the year. When he goes to sleep, he sleeps a long time. So he symbolizes tamas, power and inertia. No, let's say the power of inertia, maybe. Vibhishana is associated with sattva. Anyway, Vibhishana is very concerned about dharma. He's always the voice of reason. There are a couple of other voices of reason, but most voices in Ravana's court just suck up to Ravana, and they're also in the same Rakshasa delusion. But Vibhishana is always the one who's kind of offering more practical, down-to-earth, dharmic advice. So Vibhishana says, brother, stop, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a king. You don't kill another king's emissary or his envoy. He's a messenger. Send him back with a message. Punish him if you want to, but don't kill him, for goodness sake. And Ravana knows the Shastras. He knows that Vibhishana is right, but he's still annoyed. Can't you hold your tongue for once? But yeah, you've got a point. Can't kill him. But he's a Varna, he's a monkey. What do they care about most? Their tails. They're always proud of their tails, So he says, he'll command some of his guards, wrap it up in cotton wool, douse it in oil. Yes, burn it. Come on, set him on fire. And this is what happens. Now, Hanuman was not really enchained, because Brahma's weapon, he wasn't really affected by it. So now what is the situation? Two important factors here. One, Sita, when she took leave of Hanuman, she said, as you continue this reconnaissance, may you feel no pain. Hanuman looks at his tail and says, why does my tail feel so cool? And it's on fire. But now Hanuman makes himself, he sets himself free, makes himself into this mighty form. So now basically we have this mighty Vanara warrior who's just been given a flamethrower. And so he torches Lanka. He leaps out of his chains and he sets Lanka on fire. And he leaps here and there. He starts smashing up buildings and massive destruction. So the city is burnt now. Like so many dwellings, residences, it says all except Vibhishana's house, of all the major Rakshasas, all their mansions get burnt. And then he takes a big dive into the sea to create a big wave to smash down one of the walls. And then he's thinking, yeah, I think I did a pretty solid job there. Oh, and he's like, does a quick somersault to celebrate. But then he thinks, oh no, what about Sita? And then some celestial observers say, don't worry, Hanuman, Sita's fine. But he goes back just to check, and indeed she is. She gives him a final blessing. He says, we'll be back soon. And Hanuman makes his way back across the ocean. Mainaka is there again, the mountain. Hanuman salutes him. He says he touches Mainaka as if he takes a step, or like he has a little, not a pause, but he accepts Mainaka's support. And then as he approaches the mainland, he lets out this mighty, jubilant roar. And when they hear this sound, the Vanaras waiting know he has found her. He lands on the shore. And then, if anybody does have the original Gita Press version, I think it's the 56 and 57 to 59 canto, Hanuman now tells the story of what's just happened so far in this kanda, since he last saw his friends. So you get a review, and it's so beautiful. So everything that's happened up to now, Hanuman reviews it. This is a feature in Rāmāyaṇa, and it's a feature in yogic teaching and yogic practice. You can imagine when this was first told thousands of years ago, people would gather for several nights in succession and hear the story told, enacted, maybe with music and dance and song along the way. And so these repetitions are really helpful, like the story so far. I mean, sometimes, I don't know, modern TV series, they sometimes do this. Yeah, so far on whatever the series is called. But in the epics, we get this a lot in Rāmāyaṇa. We already saw it. Sita, when she met Anasuya, she told Anasuya her own story of how Rama won her. So now Hanuman lands back on the mainland, and he gives us it's not a particularly short summary, but but it's very beautiful. It's like it's the whole story, but in a more condensed form. But the poetry is just gorgeous. And one of the effects of this is it highlights again, the teaching. So he talks about how he met Mainaka and how after he said no to Mainaka, it was like he had this strong following wind. So it's like we revisit some of the major events, let's say, or meetings or encounters, episodes, happenings. But the way Hanuman recounts it, retells it, it's like it re-emphasizes or invites the learning to be kind of more overt. Does that make sense? Yeah. So Hanuman tells the story, and then, so Sugriva's heard it, Angada's heard it, Jambavan's heard it, and Hanuman says, so now we need to go and wage war on the Rakshasas. And Angada, Vali's son, the young prince, he says, let's just go now. Let's go and smite them. We can take them. We're mighty Vanaras. Let's go now. And Jambavan, remember the wise elder, he says, wait up, hold on. No. We're going back to Rama and Sugriva, and then we're going to go together. But we see Angada's readiness, which will be important. He's going to be a very significant figure in the war, along with Sugriva and Hanuman and many other of the great Vanaras. So they go back to Kishkinda. Now, as they go back to Kishkinda, there's a very interesting episode. They're going to cross what's called the Madhuvana. Do you know the word Madhu? Very important word. Madhu means honey or sweet. You might have heard of the town of Madurai in Tamil Nadu or Mathura in northern India. Mathura is one of the places most associated with Krishna. Madurai with Kali. Krishna means dark black. Kali is also black. She's the feminine form. He's the masculine form. Madhu means sweet. Now, it also means honey. So they go through this honey wood, this wood where there's this forest where there's loads of honey. Now, Vanaras, they like honey, yeah? They ask Hanuman's permission. Can we go on a bit of a bender? Can we have Can we have like a night out on the honey? And Hanuman gives them permission. And so you get like, I don't know how many 4,000 of these Vanara soldiers, and they all drink loads of honey. They get intoxicated. Now, what happens when 4,000 soldiers have all had loads of drinks together? Gets a bit rowdy, yeah? They start making a mess of this beautiful forest full of honey. It so happens that this forest is presided over by a close ally of Sugriva. He's called Dhadimukha. Now, Dhadimukha, why am I mentioning the name? He's not a major character, but one way we can understand his name is Dhad is from the root which means to own, to take possession, to hold on. And when the Vanara army comes tearing up the place, he thinks Sugriva won't like this unruly behavior. And instead, what happens is the Vanaras, Hanuman said, yeah, you can indulge. And they have the big tear up. And when Dhadimukha tries to stop them, they just beat him up, scratch him. He goes running to Sugriva. What do you think Sugriva is going to say, this rather stern king? Dhadimukha expects Sugriva is going to be really upset that the Vanara army is behaving like this. But what does Sugriva say when he sees his friend beaten up, telling him that the Vanara army who went off to the southeast have come back and they're just getting drunk in the forest, eating all the honey, pulling down trees? Sugriva lets out a cry of joy. He says, they must have found Sita. And he says, Dhadimukha, forgive them. They've been on a long mission, but they would only be behaving like this if they were successful. But I find it interesting that this character who wanted to stop the sweetness, his name means the one who holds. So it's almost like a Rakshasic element, yeah? So sometimes on the path of practice, it's important to enjoy the sweetness. Sometimes that's the appropriate thing. Allow yourself to be nourished by the joy of practice. Sometimes it's going to be hard. They've just done something really difficult. Hanuman, he doesn't drink the honey. He's soaked in the honey of devotion. But his friends, he says, yeah, enjoy yourselves. Taste the sweetness. Don't hold on to it. Love is a rose, but you better not pick it. It only grows when it's on the vine. Handful of thorns, then you know you've missed it. Lose your love when you say the word mine. Do you know that lyric? It's from Linda Ronstadt sang the song, Love is a Rose. If you try to hold on to it, you can't enjoy it. So Daddy Mukha, he was holding on. And Hanuman says, no, you don't need to hold on, enjoy. So when we're practicing, sometimes we get into habits and we hold on to them. But when the practice works, we come to a point where we have to stop holding and allow ourselves to move into the new dimension that it's unveiled. Make sense? So now they get back to Rama and Lakshmana. So Hanuman gives the report to Sugriva, to Ram Lakshmana. Rama feels joy and sorrow. He feels tremendous gratitude. He praises Hanuman, but we also see how much grief he feels for the separation from Sita. And then Rama resolves to depart for Lanka. And when he does, all sorts of auspicious omens are seen. Now we're already in the Yuddha Kanda now. So in the last, there are 2 more Kandas, but some people think the last one was just an addition later. So we're already in the last Kanda of what we're going to be focusing on, the Yuddha Kanda, the Kanda of the war. So we see the reunion and there is the resolution from Rama, okay, we're going to invade. And then the action cuts back to Lanka, where Ravana, after the visit of Hanuman, is holding a council. He's just lost a crack battalion. Now, he's called all his advisors. To begin with, all the advisors just puffing him and themselves up. And, we can take, who are these people? We'll just destroy them. Ravana tells one of his top generals, prepare for the defense of the city. Now, there's one detail here there's obviously hundreds of details, but one that I'm going to mention. Ravana doesn't say, let's go to the coast, and before they can even come to our island, let's attack them. He's too arrogant. He doesn't think they can even cross the ocean. He just says, prepare to defend the city. Now, we can see this as arrogance, as hubris, and we know hubris breeds nemesis. However, we can also see it if we think of Lanka as the kingdom of our fears. This is the comfort zone. Our fears don't sally forth beyond the known. They stay within the established familiar realm. This is why yoga practice actually works. When we expose ourselves to new depths of experience, to new layers of experience, to new horizons, the old things we've been clinging to, that clinging will dissolve in the light of the new type of whole system experience. And the fear can't resist then, because it lives in a ground of the known. When the ground of the known expands to a place of such sweetness that the old fear has no ground to rise in again, then it's done. Does that make sense? So Ravana can be seen to be arrogant, but I think this is a symptom of fears as they stay within their own realm. Meantime, another of Ravana's advisors urges him, he says, what are you waiting for, Ravana? Take that Sita by force, enjoy her, and having enjoyed her, then go and join the battle, full of ferocity. And Ravana says, I can't do that. And he shares a secret that way back, he raped a celestial apsaras called Punjikastara, and she was a denizen of Brahma's precincts in the heavens, and she tried to escape him. He forced himself upon her, and having violated her, she she got back to Brahma, who heard about it, and then Brahma came and castigated Ravana and says, if you ever do that again, you will instantly die. And so that was the end of Ravana's raping days. So he can't force himself on any women ever since, including Sita. But having admitted that, he then boasts of his prowess and how still, let them come, we'll just destroy them. And at which point, who speaks up? Vibhishana. Vibhishana says, Ravana, calm down. You're not speaking sense here. You're talking about Rama and Lakshmana and this huge army of Sugriva and all the Vanaras. Nobody in the three worlds could contend with Rama. Give him back his wife and make friends with him. This is the only sensible path forwards. Indrajit, Ravana's son, pipes up next, shouts down his uncle Vibhishana and says how the Rakshasas can take them. And then Vibhishana petitions his brother one more time. And then he says, brother, if you will not do the right thing, then I'm leaving and I'm going to go over to Rama. Go. And so that's what Vibhishana does with four of his close confidants, four of his allies. So Vibhishana and his four Rakshasa comrades, they desert their brother Ravana, having tried to persuade him. They tried to give wise counsel. It was rejected twice. And then at third time, Vibhishana says, okay, well, I'm going then. I'm not going to be a fool and die at the hands of die by the side of a man who's intent on doing wrong. I want to do the right thing. You might say he also wants to become the king, but who knows? Anyway, he decides to leave and go over to the other side. That takes us back over the ocean because he flies with his four confidants across the ocean to present himself to Rama. And then there's a very interesting episode where with many of the top aides, you might say his inner circle, there is a debate amongst Rama's allies, should they accept Vibhishana? Sugriva, remember Sugriva had his brother killed. So Sugriva is not the person, not maybe the best person to ask about family loyalties. And he thinks this is a terrible idea. He's Ravana. First of all, he's Ravana's brother, but now he's betrayed his brother, so he'll betray anybody. You can't trust him. I think you should, send him away or even kill him. Different people put forth different opinions. But finally, after listening to everybody, Hanuman being the last to speak, Hanuman who's already seen Vibhishana in action, it was Vibhishana who said, don't kill the messenger. He also saw Vibhishana performing worship this first night. He saw him performing a Vedic ritual. So Hanuman knows more about him than anybody else there. He's the last to speak before Rama speaks. But the last thing Rama says, I have vowed, if anybody comes to me for protection with sincerity, then I will protect them. So I must accept him. It's a very beautiful episode. People give all sorts of how you should test him, and then Hanuman kind of debunks everything, and then Rama kind of culminates it. And it's very interesting you see how all these different perspectives are aired. So it's a beautiful example of how to consider different perspectives and leadership, because Rama doesn't, all the ideas are thoroughly aired before the conclusion is arrived at. But the conclusion is we will take on these new helpers. So now we have Vibhishana in the Vanara Rama camp. So in our final session next week, we will have the Yuddha, the war between Rama and Ravana that can only be compared to the war between Rama and Ravana. And we will also have a few things to do with the symbolism of some of the main characters. Anita asked a question a few weeks back about why is Rama associated with a bow? I invite everybody to contemplate that. I also invite everybody to contemplate Pierre's question, why would I want to sing Sita Ram? What does it mean to sing Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram? Why would I do that practice? What might be my intellectual motivation for this heartful practice? What would it mean, or what could it mean? Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions? We had to go very fast, so it's so rich, Rāmāyaṇa, but Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody. So that was the example of a session on the recent Living Ramayana course. So if you're interested in joining the Living the Bhagavad Gītā course, 12 sessions in the spring of 2026, the course will start end of February and it'll run through to the end of May or perhaps the very beginning of June. There'll be a week or two of break around Easter. Sessions will be on a Monday in English and a Wednesday in French, 6:30 to 8 p.m. in Europe time, like in Czech Republic or in France or Switzerland, and an hour earlier in the UK, for example. And as I mentioned before, if you join, you will get access to all the recordings for the duration of the course and a whole year thereafter. The link to more details and to sign up is in the description. I will be very pleased to see you there. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Hanuman, Jai Shri Lakshman, Jai Bhagavan.